Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar from WTS International and the Transportation Research Board. We're incredibly excited to offer this program, especially on the heels of the TRB's 103rd annual meeting, which I know many of our WTS members attended. WTS International is proud to have a long-term relationship with TRB, and we think that today's webinar will offer some basic but absolutely crucial information on what TRB does, how to get engaged in their work, and how to support and utilize the amazing transportation resources and research that TRB produces each year. I'd like to thank TRB and Executive Director Sheehan for their partnership and our renewed interest in collaboration and our shared priorities. Today's webinar is only one example of this increased engagement, with more to come. Notes, just as we get started, WTS will be recording the session. There will also be a short question and answer period at the end, so we welcome attendees to add their questions into the webinar chat or into the Q&A box, and WTS staff will moderate those questions, and I'll present those to our speakers at the end. So without further ado, I'm honored to introduce today's TRB experts. We have Victoria Sheehan, Executive Director of TRB. Sheehan came to TRB from the New Hampshire Department of Transportation, where she was commissioner for 7 years and also founding member of the WTS New Hampshire chapter. She oversaw areas such as aeronautics, rail, transit, construction, operations, finance, and administration. While serving as commissioner, Sheehan also served as president of the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, AASHTO, from 2020 to 2021. Before joining the New Hampshire DOT, Sheehan spent 10 years at the Massachusetts DOT, where she worked as the manager of strategic planning and highway performance and as the Accelerated Bridge Program Manager. She holds a master's degree in structural engineering and architecture from the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. We also have Marcy Greenberg with us, and she's the manager of TRB's Airport Cooperative Research Program, or ACRP, and has managed numerous projects and operations, maintenance, safety, and security, and legal issues that affect the industry. Prior to joining ACRP, she spent over 18 years in airport operations and management and senior management positions at airports in Rhode Island, Indiana, and California. Marcy is an accredited airport executive by the American Association of Airport Executives, holds an MBA and a bachelor's in aviation management from, and as an Ohio native, I'm going to land this correctly, The Ohio State University. And then we have Claire Randall, who's the Senior Program Officer for TRB's Technical Activities Division, where she supports technical committees addressing issues including policy, organization, executive management, planning, and public transportation. Prior to joining TRB, she contributed to local zoning, current and long-range planning efforts, managing mixed-use and transit-oriented development projects in Northern Virginia, and as a project manager for an agency coordinating regional transit planning and funding. Claire holds bachelor's degrees in finance and political science from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, a master's degree in urban planning and policy from the University of Illinois at Chicago, and a master's degree in public administration from George Mason University. So welcome to our TRB experts, and I will turn it over to you, Victoria.
Well, thank you, Sarah. It's great to be with you. We really do appreciate having this opportunity to ensure that those who are already engaged in the TRB community understand all of our roles and volunteer opportunities, as well as to have a chance to hopefully encourage some new participants in the work of TRB. Can I have the next slide, please? So to begin, I did want to talk about the mission and vision of our organization. So I'll talk in a moment about how the TRB is part of a larger organization, the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. But our vision for the Transportation Research Board specifically is a nation and a world that rely on scientific evidence and expertise about transportation to ensure a system that benefits individuals, society, and the environment. And so at TRB, we do three things. We convene, bringing together practitioners as well as academics to talk about the challenges that we're facing in the industry, and then start to work, more importantly, on the solutions to those challenges. But we also conduct research, and Marcy today is going to talk about our cooperative research programs. And the third thing that we do is we advise the nation. So we are oftentimes called upon to provide advice to different entities on policies that should be implemented based on scientific evidence that will benefit the transportation community, which more importantly will benefit the users of our systems who rely on transportation every day. Our mission at TRB is to mobilize the expertise, experience, and knowledge to anticipate and solve these problems. And so while today we hope to motivate you to want to be engaged in our work and contributing to our work, we also see it as our responsibility to expose as many individuals as possible to the reports that we produce, to all of the content that we put out there, so that even if you aren't able to volunteer and be an active participant, you at least are aware of all of the advances that research is making and are leveraging those best practices each and every day, whether you're working in the public sector, the private sector, or if you're in academia, you're inspired to do research in the areas that will be of value to those practitioners. Next slide. So as Sarah mentioned, we just celebrated our 103rd annual meeting of the Transportation Research Board. This is the one time every year when all of our committees convene. And so we have over 430 committee meetings, as well as panel and lecture sessions and poster presentations. But since the beginning of TRB, the motto really has been everyone interested is invited. This even ended up being the title of the book that was produced when TRB turned 100 in celebration of our history. And so while we ask people to volunteer and contribute to our mission, everybody is encouraged to come and observe the activities of TRB. And even if you're not serving on one of our committees, there are still opportunities for you to do work and assist in the advancement of initiatives that will be to the benefit of the transportation industry. Next slide. And so the Transportation Research Board is actually one of 7 divisions that are part of the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. There are members from each of the 3 honorific societies who serve on what's called the National Research Council. That's a body that was established back in 1916 by Congress to conduct work and research that would be of benefit to the nation. And so we are very proud of that tradition that we have of being a service to the nation when it comes to ensuring that science informs policy. And TRB has had many opportunities to collaborate with our colleagues across the various divisions of the academies. That's one of the things that sets us apart, is that we don't just bring together transportation experts, but depending on the societal goal that we're trying to achieve and the other disciplines that might want to contribute or might be needed to ensure that we approach problems from the right directions, we are able to use that network of professionals that we have supporting all 7 of the program areas. Next slide. But the Transportation Research Board itself can be divided into 3 divisions. And so we have our Technical Activities Division that Claire is representing today. When people think of technical activities, they of course think of our annual meeting, but we at TRB are much more than 1 week in January. Each year we have approximately 12 conferences throughout the course of the year. The annual meeting, of course, being the largest of those gatherings. And then we have 177 standing committees. So there really isn't an issue in transportation that we're not talking about. And we have over 350 subcommittees of those standing committees who are writing research needs statements and working to identify what the priorities should be for the research community, but also through the annual meeting doing calls for papers and showcasing not just the research that's conducted by TRB, but the research that is conducted across the country and even across the globe, because we have a significant amount of participation from international partners. Our second division is the Consensus and Advisory Studies Group. That's where we're actually giving advice. We are writing reports that provide recommendations either to federal agencies or recommendations that were requested by Congress so that policymakers could make informed decisions and leverage the latest scientific evidence to benefit and strengthen the policies that they're putting forward. And then our third and final division is the Cooperative Research Program. And Marcy's going to give you a full overview today of all of those programs. She, of course, represents the ACRP, but we have 4 programs, the largest being NCHRP, the National Highways Cooperative Research Program, and then the TCRP and BTS CRP are smaller programs, but all of these CRP programs have been serving their various stakeholders with reports being produced at record numbers in recent years. Next slide. So at this point, I will turn it over to Marcy, and she's going to do a deeper dive and help you understand exactly what the opportunities are when it comes to contributing to the cooperative research programs, and also where you can find those reports that you may want to leverage as you're advancing your everyday work.
Thank you, Victoria. And by the way, I'll say this later, but all those reports you can download for free. The cooperative research programs are contractor-led applied research projects that seek to identify solutions to issues and challenges of their respective industries. Topics include safety, environmental, legal, security, energy, and many others. Victoria mentioned the 4 CRPs. I'll say them again. It's the Airport Cooperative Research Program, the Behavioral Traffic Safety CRP, the National Cooperative Highway Research Program, and the Transit Cooperative Research Program. Next slide, please. This graphic shows the different stakeholders that we have for CRP and our process at a very high level. Each CRP has an agreement with their DOT modal sponsors, such as the FAA for the airport program, FTA for transit, and FHWA and the state DOTs for the highway program. For behavioral traffic safety, their sponsor is the Governor's Highway Safety Association in conjunction with NHTSA. Moving clockwise, you will see volunteers. Last year, we had over 3,300 unique volunteers in CRP who are necessary for the success of our programs. By serving on a panel, you scope the work, select a contractor to conduct the research, and provide technical guidance and oversight. After the panel has had an in-depth conversation about all of the proposals that come in as a result of the RFP, a contractor is selected based on consensus. Contractors are typically consultants and academics. The research results are free to download and are applicable across the country. Next slide, please. The research results become reports, guidebooks, tools, and resources. Some of the other products include legal research digest and syntheses that provide a state of the current practice. Next slide, please. To become a Cooperative Research Program panel member, you need to set up a MyTRB account. It is through MyTRB that you will nominate yourself. So please be sure to update your profile if you already have one. Once you're in MyTRB, you will go to where it says CRP Panels tab and click on Available Projects. This will show, as the slide shows some of them, all of the available projects that are seeking panel nominations. You can submit your name for the project you are interested in, and once you have confirmed your details and contact information, you will need to provide specific information that makes you perfect for serving on the panel. You will have an opportunity to demonstrate what you bring to the project and why you should be selected, and we ask that you upload your resume. Lastly, we need you to read and affirm your understanding and that you will comply with our conflict of interest policy. When we are forming panels, we are seeking diversity in a number of different ways, such as geography, ethnicity, gender, expertise, and the type of organization. Though if you are selected, you will be selected as an individual and not as a representative of your organization. ACRP begins soliciting for panel nominations in August every year. The Behavioral Traffic Safety CRP begins their nominations in spring and early summer. TCRP begins in mid to late November, and NCHRP begins in May. Next slide, please. One way to access the CRP reports and activities is by going to our snap searches, which are already designed, and it's a page that will allow you to search for specific topics, such as some of the examples on the slide, to find the CRP work in that area, as well as any other TRB reports. Another way to search is to go to the nap.nationalacademies.org website, but I'll also tell you Google can be your friend. Next slide. Another great way to get involved with any of the CRPs is to propose on a project. To find the open RFPs, you can use the link on the top of this slide or through the program's homepage, and on the top ribbon, select projects and choose request for proposals. You will see a list of the open RFPs by program. Select the project you are interested in, and it will take you to a page just like this one for ACRP 02101, right now showing basic information. Below that, you will find the RFP and the process for submitting. You can reach out to the responsible staff officer if you have any questions, but don't expect an answer to any vague questions such as, what is the panel really looking for? Everything should be explicitly outlined in the RFP. Panels want you to demonstrate your knowledge of the topic without forgetting that it's research, and they want to see your creativity. Most importantly, do not be late in submitting it. Even 1 minute late will result in your proposal being rejected. We all hate when that happens because we know all the resources that go into preparing a proposal. We have other tips for you and would be happy to share those with you at another time. Next slide, please. To be notified of panel nominations and of open RFPs, you can sign up to TRB Weekly for up-to-date information. You will also learn more about other TRB webinars, projects, and conferences. I will now turn it over to Claire.
Thanks, Marcy. Next slide. So I'm going to talk to you about what we do in the Technical Activities Division and how you might get involved. So what is the Technical Activities Division? We sometimes refer to it also as TAD. Our charge is to promote innovation and progress in transportation through research and information exchange by identifying research needed and in progress and disseminating research results. So our big event of the year, our primary product, is the TRB Annual Meeting. But as Victoria said, we are so much more than 1 week in January. because there are opportunities to engage throughout the course of the year. First, we have committee meetings. We have 177 standing committees, and they hold periodic meetings throughout the course of the year. Many meet quarterly, but some meet as frequently as monthly. And anyone interested is welcome to attend those meetings. They are open. We also publish the Transportation Research Record, which is the journal of TRB. And those volumes are published throughout the course of the year. We also hold up to or around 12 conferences a year that are much smaller than the TRB annual meeting. We call them our specialty conferences or our TRB convene conferences. And these are deeper dives in particular topics. They usually are about 100 to 400 attendees, and they are held throughout the country. So there's ample opportunities to attend, even if you can't make it to our annual meeting. A product of many of those conferences are e-circulars or conference proceedings. We also have a research needs statements database, or an RNS database. And this is a list of the high priority research needs that have been identified by our standing committees. And I've heard it referred to as being a shopping list for researchers and practitioners who fund and conduct transportation research. Now, we couldn't do any of this work without the support of our volunteers. And many of these or all of these activities are either specifically conducted by or supported by our standing committees that are comprised of thousands of members and friends. Next slide. So you may have heard of our committees referred to by codes. So I'll provide a little bit of a background to explain how we're structured, what all those codes mean. So we have 177 standing committees, each of them addressing issues in a specific community of practice. Each of the committees is organized in one of 10 groups, which are located at the top of the screen and also listed in a bigger font on the right-hand side. But some groups are so large that they're also further organized into sections. So, for example, up on the upper left-hand corner of your screen, we have the Safety and Operations Group. There are 24 committees in the Safety and Operations Group, and they all start with the letters AC. So within the Safety and Operations Group, it's further divided into 3 sections. For example, we have the Pedestrians, Bicycles, and Human Factors section, and all of the committees within that section will start with the code ACH. The Operations section has 12 committees and starts with the code ACP, and Safety is the final section within that group has a code of ACS. Now, some of our groups, the ones on the right-hand side of the screen, are much smaller and don't need to be further divided into sections. So they are just at the group level. So for example, Public Transportation Group has 12 committees, and each one of them starts with the letters AP in their code. So you can get some more information in our online directory to specifically research some of these committees and get more information. I'll talk about that briefly later. So each group has a chair who serves on the Technical Activities Council. That's at the top there. And the Technical Activities Council is our volunteer leadership body that helps oversee some of the activities and provide some direction for our priorities. Finally, we have 4 coordinating councils, and they serve to coordinate much broader activities across all of our standing committees. And those are the Young Members Coordinating Council. We also have International City Transportation Issues and Rural Transportation Issues. Next slide, please. So I'll introduce you to the TRB Annual Meeting. I hope some of you were able to join us a couple weeks ago. So the TRB Annual Meeting, I've heard anecdotally, is the largest gathering of transportation professionals in the world. I don't know if it's that true, but it certainly is big and exciting. So every January in DC, we welcome over 14,000 attendees to over 600 events in the course of a 5-day period in January. So at the annual meeting, all of our standing committees hold meetings at the annual meeting, as well as the vast majority of our subcommittees. So anyone can attend those meetings. Again, they're open. We have workshops, which are much longer. They're 3-hour chunks of time, and they're much more interactive. Those are held on Sunday and Thursday of our annual meeting. But the bulk of our program is in the middle. We have lectern sessions, which are the much more traditional. We have presenters giving their presentations, or sometimes we have panel discussions and followed by Q&A. And finally, we have poster sessions, which are extremely popular because they provide an opportunity for attendees to chat one-on-one with the authors of the research and specifically talk to them about their work and get one-on-one time. Finally, we have our Young Members Coordinating Council and other groups as well organize a number of sessions specifically for young professionals as we strive to welcome the next generation of transportation professionals to TRB. So who organizes all of these meetings and all of these sessions for the annual meeting? Next slide, please. So our standing committees do. They do a lot of work. So what do they do, and how can you get involved in our standing committees? So our standing committees are communities of individuals in a particular subject area, and they get together and they exchange information about best practices, professional development, and it's a platform for networking and mentoring. We have, as I previously noted, we have 107 standing committees and over 300 smaller subcommittees under the standing committees. One of the biggest responsibilities of standing committees is to review the papers that are submitted for consideration for presentation at the TRB annual meeting, but also for publication in our journal, the Transportation Research Record. Once the committees have determined which papers they've like to have presented at the annual meeting, they are responsible for organizing all of their sessions that are sponsored by their committees. So they'll have lectern sessions and poster sessions. Yet on occasion, some of those papers are presented at workshops or in committee meetings. So other than papers in the annual meeting, our standing committees are also involved in authoring or contributing to some of our TRB publications. Marcy referenced our TR News. It's our, I believe, a quarterly magazine periodical, and some of our stand-in committees will sponsor a theme issue, and they'll prepare all of the articles for those for the TR News theme issues. Our standing committees also organize webinars. As I referenced before, we have approximately 100 webinars per year, and about 50 of them, about half of them come out of CRP, but our standing committees organize about 50% or the other half of our webinars. They're also responsible for sponsoring our TRB convened conferences, our specialty conferences. And finally, they're involved in the drafting of the research needs statements, the RNS, for inclusion in our database, and as well as problem statements that ultimately feed into CRP and possibly become projects if they are selected. So as you can see, our standing committees are extremely busy and they have a lot on their plates, which is where you all come in and where we would welcome your help in any and all of the activities. And while we do have formal members of our standing committees, anyone can participate. As Victoria noted, everyone interested is invited, and we rely on not only our committee members, but also friends of those committees who are active participants. So next slide, please. So how do you become a friend of a committee? The best way to get involved in technical activities and our standing committees is to first become a friend. Marcy indicated make sure you have a My TRB profile and make sure it's up to date. You can see here in the tab, it says My Activities. You can search for the committees that you're interested in. And if you click that box over on the right-hand side, Become a Friend, you will automatically get on the distribution list with all the communications coming out of those committees with their activities, opportunities to get involved, opportunities to volunteer. So this is probably one of the best ways to introduce yourself to the committees, and potentially it's often a way of ultimately becoming involved as a member of the committees themselves. So I wanted to point out on here too that just generally my TRB is a gold mine for information and an introduction to all sorts of information at TRB. Some of the other tabs I'd like to point out while we're here was Marcy mentioned the CRP panels where you can self-nominate. We also have the online directory, which is a fabulous resource. It's a listing of all of our standing committees. You can search either by code or by code word if you're not sure exactly where to start. But it's also a way that you can access all the different companies that are involved in TRB, and you can get a listing of all of the individuals associated with that company who are in our directory if you'd like to reach out on a particular topic. And you can also search for other people who are part of the TRB community in the online directory. Finally, I'd like to point out the webinar tab, which you can get more information on our upcoming webinars, and you can register for them there. And then also the RNS tab, there is access to our RNS database, the Research Needs Statements database, where you can get that list of all the priority research projects. So let's see. I think that's what I have. I'd like to reiterate again, anyone interested is welcome. And so I guess I'll turn it back to you all. Thank you.
So as we wrap up, I just want to stress a few things once again. We have a small but mighty team at TRB in terms of staff. We have around 125 people to coordinate all of this work. But the work of TRB is made possible by the over 6,500 volunteers who are contributing to the mission in all of the ways that Marcy and Claire described. And then, of course, we have our contractors who are helping us deliver the products that we release through our cooperative research program. But it is absolutely critical that we have balance between practitioners and academics, balance between public and private sector engagement. And we are extremely focused on ensuring that we have diversity in every sense of the word. As Marcy said, we are looking for diversity of experience. We want regional diversity. And of course, we want gender, racial, and ethnic diversity in terms of who is contributing to our work as well. This is why we have partnerships with a number of organizations who can assist us in recruiting volunteers. We've been proud to partner with WTS for some time, and we actually have a memorandum of understanding with WTS. So my thanks to Sarah and Lindsay and the entire staff at WTS International for their willingness to not only partner, but more importantly, we've been talking about how we can strengthen that partnership and find new ways to engage with WTS to help us continue to find that diverse pool of volunteers that we need to do our work, as well as to promote those contracting opportunities for those who might be interested in being part of the cooperative research program. When you serve on a standing committee, you can serve for up to three-year terms, but we have a lot of rotation happening right now. And so there are new opportunities for folks to step up and serve on a committee. Volunteerism truly is the lifeblood of TRB. And so we're looking for people at every stage in their career. That is the other thing I wanted to emphasize today. There's a lot of respect for the technical expertise that we have within the TRB community, but we want people who are starting out in their education and are part of the transportation community, as well as recent graduates, mid-career professionals, and then those who have the tenure and the experience. Because we all know that some of those folks who are new to the transportation sector, those might be the individuals who are thinking about things differently and bringing those innovative ideas that could help us face the challenges that we are all trying to address today. And so, please consider getting engaged no matter what point you're at in your career. And certainly if you're new to transportation, you've transitioned from another sector into transportation, we really value that experience and what you could bring to the work that we're doing. And so we ask that you, first of all, friend a committee as was suggested. And then once you're a friend, start to figure out exactly what role you might want to perform in terms of contributing to our work. And if you really, we understand the pressures that everybody are under at this moment in time. There's unprecedented investment in transportation happening. We've had workforce challenges. If you cannot volunteer, we understand, but please be a part of our community because professionally you'll benefit from being aware of the research advancements that are happening and leveraging those best practices, leveraging those products. So even if you can't be part of our work, please be a consumer of our work. Last of all, I would just say that when you talk to anybody who's been a volunteer at TRB, they will tell you that they get so much out of that experience beyond being able to contribute to research and advancing in their career from a technical perspective. They're forming lifelong friendships. They're expanding their professional network. They're sharing experiences both formally through the work that we're doing, but also informally. As many of you know, when you go to conferences and events, yes, there's great content in those programs, but all of those sidebar conversations that you have, those other opportunities to connect with colleagues, that's where you can get as much fulfillment as contributing to the work directly. So I can't stress enough, we have this large network of volunteers because people find it so rewarding to be a part of the TRB community. And these standing committees, these panels that we form, they are truly communities of practice where people are assembling to complete tasks, yes, as part of our mission, but they are always sharing best practices and ideas with one another. And as a friend, you get to have that level of engagement where you can be still contributing, but also taking back those ideas to your own organizations, even if you're not formally a part of the committees and the work that we're doing. And then lastly, we're not just a national organization. The majority of our sponsors are US-based organizations. The vast majority of our funding comes from federal sources, from the modal administrations and from the state departments of transportation in particular. But we do partner with a number of international organizations, just as we have memorandums of understanding with organizations like WTS, Latinos in Transit, and Compto. We have MOUs with a number of international organizations. And so we are continuing to look for opportunities to showcase what we're doing here in the US so that both developed and developing countries can leverage those best practices. But there is so much that we can also learn from our international colleagues. And so every one of our standing committees has seats that are available for international participants. And we have our International Coordinating Council, as well as a subcommittee of our executive committee who are always looking for ways to strengthen the relationship that we have with international colleagues. So hopefully we've motivated you today to be a part of our community. If you're an existing volunteer who's been active in TRB, thank you. Thank you for your service. We truly couldn't do the work without all of you. And please do as my colleague suggested, go to mytrb.org, set up your profile if you don't already have one, and then check out all of our products and guidance documents. because, at the end of the day, we're spending a lot of federal and state resources developing these best practices. We want to make sure that they are leveraged, whether it's in design, construction, operating, or maintaining the nation's infrastructure, because the work that we do is advancing the state of the practice, and we are trying to provide the resources that practitioners need to stretch the value of the investments that we make in our systems each and every day. So I think we'll wrap it up there and take some questions if you have them.
Great. Well, thank you all for a very informative presentation. We do have a few questions that have come in through the Q&A and come in via chat directly into me. So I think we have a few questions around the standing committees, and I know, Victoria, you mentioned this there at the end, but as you think of the makeup of the standing committees, the young members, international members, DOTs, is there an ideal mix, or is there specific seats that are assigned out to certain demographics? How does that work within the standing committees?
Claire, do you want to take that question first?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Our standing committees may have up to 36 members. So 25 of them are broad, is a broad category. And then on top of that, there's an opportunity for there to be up to 5 additional international members, up to 4 additional young members, and 2 state DOT members as well. Now, within all of them, we take a look at the time of rotation to ensure that there is an appropriate mix of across sector, across gender, across race, and to make sure that we have an appropriate mix to conduct the work of the committee. So yes, and as Victoria indicated earlier, I believe that individuals are representing themselves, not their agencies. So, but we do look for a very broad spectrum of individuals to serve on those committees.
Perfect, thank you. And this is, I think, a follow-up to that is, we have someone here who has been a friend of the committee for a long time. What would be your recommendation in navigating that next step into becoming an appointed member or getting more involved outside of being a friend of the committee?
Volunteer.
Yeah, volunteer, step up to take on a task or an action, and show your commitment to doing the work. And then when we have rotation and seats open, that's when chairs will look at that friends list and who has been actively contributing to the committee, and will encourage those individuals to transition into a committee role officially. Just building on the last question, some of our communities of practice are rather small because of the technical nature of that topic area. And so when you talk about the composition and the mix of individuals that are volunteering, it can look a little different from committee to committee, but we are striving for as much balance as possible. And so that's what our staff are working with the chairs of the committees to do, is based on the nature of the topic, find the right mix and the right balance. But we have a lot of people within the Friends community that are doing work. And so one of the things that we're looking closely at is how can we ensure that those friends do get the recognition for their contributions and are provided that opportunity to serve. And we have, we're starting rotation right now. So this might be your chance for some of those friends to move into full committee roles. But then we'll be looking for that next wave of individuals to start to contribute in a friends role.
Great. And point of clarification here is there a guidance in place that would only allow 1 member per organization to be in a committee?
So that is something that we are looking more closely at. As you all know, there's been a lot of turnover in the industry. You have, people that retire from the public sector and move into the private sector. You have people moving from one firm to another. So we aspire to having no more than 1 person from any organization, because we don't want the perception to be that any group is having undue influence. Like I said, our goal is to maintain balance. However, at a moment in time, because someone's circumstances might change, yes, we could have representation from our two people representing one organization. But that is something that we're constantly looking at, so that when rotation comes around, we're making the adjustments accordingly to restore balance to that committee. And so, yes, you'll see examples where we don't have the perfect balance because the individuals, might have moved around in the industry.
Great. Our next question is around the committee codes that you were speaking of. And is there a key that defines those that like tells you like AC is the safety? Like, is there anywhere that we can find a key or legend that would help in deciphering some of those?
The best resources are online directory. I would recommend. You can search by committee, and there's an opportunity. You could type in safety, for example, if that's where you're interested, and then all of those codes should populate. So it might be easier to start by searching by topic and go from there.
Great.
Yeah, and I have to say, I've been a part of the TRB community for quite some time. As you heard in the introduction, I worked for Massachusetts Department of Transportation and then for New Hampshire DOT before I assumed this role. But even as the executive director, I don't have the codes for 177 committees memorized. So oftentimes volunteers come up to me and they say, oh, I'm a member of, and they rattle off the committee code. And I ask them to please use plain English. It's for convenience. Some of these titles are long. They use the numbers, but we're trying to encourage people, especially to create a more inclusive environment, to use the words as well, so people truly understand who the group is and what they're discussing.
We will put away the rapid fire questions of asking you committee names based on codes then. We have a next question here around moving into a little bit more of the paper presentation submissions, noting that, there are additional meetings other than the annual meeting. I know at WTS, we have been promoting the conference for advancing transportation equity, and then the women and gender conference, both coming up this summer in Baltimore, and then this fall in Irvine. As you think about if someone has submitted a paper or presentation to the annual meeting and maybe it wasn't accepted, is that a proposal that they can use again, or is it something that they should submit and try again the next year? Or would you recommend that they alter or go back and change that submission?
I think they'd be more than welcome to submit for consideration for presentation at our specialty conferences as well. Although that process is a little bit different on a separate platform, and we typically only ask for abstracts as opposed to full papers. So it might actually be less of a barrier for individuals to be able to, particularly practitioners. I understand it might be harder to write full papers, for them to consider submitting an abstract for presentation at our smaller conferences.
We have a question here from someone who doesn't necessarily have an academic or research background, but they do have many years of experience in transportation. And so they're interested in becoming a paper reviewer. Do you have any general guidance on, requirements of that? Do you need that academic research background in order to become a paper reviewer, and any kind of expertise that are needed in that?
So I'll start. We have lots of volunteer opportunities. None of the activities of TRB are possible without volunteers. And so we rely very heavily on our committee members when it comes to the majority of our technical activities. And then certainly our panel members are critical to the delivery of the cooperative research program. But you can volunteer in other ways. For every individual conference, we now have conference planning teams. So if your schedule is such that you have some availability for a short period, and you have access to that network of people that we might want to engage with, to find the panelists and the content that we think would be timely for a conference, you could volunteer in that capacity. You can volunteer to be on our editorial board if you have the background, to help us review the papers that aren't just presented at annual meeting, but actually are reviewed more thoroughly for consideration in our transportation research record, which is the journal of TRB. And then we have, yes, people who can, if they're a friend of a committee, could be called upon to help with the paper review as we review the papers for annual meeting. And that is a huge undertaking. You can imagine most people believe in just-in-time delivery. While we have a deadline for paper submission, the vast majority of the papers come in, days before that deadline. And so we have a very short period to review all of that content and then make decisions on what should be showcased at annual meeting. And so, yes, friends of committees can certainly support those efforts as well.
And if I may also add specifically related to, is it okay if practitioners? Yes. Actually, I've spoken with a number of we have paper review coordinators who lead the process for each of the different committees. And a best practice they've told me is to ensure that many of the papers are reviewed by academics, by practitioners, by individuals with a broad spectrum of knowledge and not just one single perspective. So yes, practitioners are most welcome.
Great, thank you. And we have a question in the Q&A as well. And I know coming to the annual meeting, I discovered new committees that was not aware of before. And so this is a great question of, is there a limit to how many committees you can be a friend of?
No limit to how many committees you can friend. We do have a limit that you can only serve on 2 committees. That's the maximum number. But when it comes to friending a committee, you could choose to friend many, but I will caution that then means that you're on the distribution list for all of those committees. And if they are particularly active, your inbox will become rather full in a short period of time. So certainly don't hesitate to friend a committee. You can always choose to step away if you determine that area of expertise isn't your primary focus. Although we are encouraging people to friend more committees, I think the cross-cutting nature of the topics that we're dealing with in transportation today, as well as the multimodal approach that we will have to take to address some of the emerging technologies, we are asking people to really think about lending their expertise to a committee beyond the ones that they have previously been involved in. And certainly as we rotate members, we're welcoming new people into one arena. So we want to make sure that our veteran volunteers have another place. So we're encouraging them to volunteer in these other ways we just described, helping with paper reviews, helping with conference planning, or lending their talents to another committee because their perspective, even if it's based on working in a different mode of transportation or another area, might be that fresh approach and idea that helps us be successful in a different technical arena.
We've got 2 more questions here. I think the last one is around committees, and then I'll take us out of committees here for a closing question. But travel commitments and costs for committee members, any requirements there? Is it mandatory that you have to attend the annual meeting if you are a committee member?
So this is something that we're working on, is an expectations document, so we can better articulate what the expectations are. Of course, we hope that all of our full-fledged members will be able to attend all of the gatherings of that committee. But we are offering hybrid meetings now, which allows people to participate even if they're unable to travel. And we recognize that while we hope to have as much participation from committee members as possible, it's just not feasible to have everybody there all of the time. And so we are refining our documents to make it clear, what level of commitment we're asking people to make when they agree to serve. And again, we recognize we have friends of committees who've been doing an extraordinary amount of work. If your circumstances change and you can't be an active committee member any longer, we're really hoping that people will, raise their hand and say, look, I'm sorry, I just can't commit in the way that I had hoped to, and give that opportunity for somebody else to serve. So these are some of the things that we're refining. I think especially with just the attrition we've seen in the industry, how volunteerism has changed post-pandemic. We want people to have the opportunity to say, I can't quite do as much as I thought I could, and find a way to support the work by giving those opportunities to the folks that are already engaged with the committee.
If I could step in, I'd like to talk about the CRP panels. If you are on a cooperative research panel, we pay for your travel to come to Washington, D.C. And ACRP has conducted a survey of our practitioners of why they like to be engaged with an ACRP panel. And we found that they're interested in being involved in cutting edge research. They like the opportunity to network, and they like being able to give back to the industry. So all of your questions that you've asked today have been great. And I think there's a great opportunity to serve on a panel and get to come to Washington, D.C. probably 3 times at our expense.
So that is a distinction. I'm glad, Marcy, that you raised that. For the standing committees, we do not support and fund the travel of all the committee members. This is why we offer hybrid options. Chairs of committees, we do compensate them for some of their travel, but there isn't funding available to support the entire committee. But on the cooperative research side, these are projects that are funded by federal sponsors or the state DOTs. And so that is part of the budget for each of those projects to pay for the travel expenses, not the time, but the travel expenses for the panel members to participate. And we appreciate at TRB, we have 3 types of volunteers. We have folks for whom research and being a part of the TRB community is very much their day job. Their employers are extremely supportive of them being part of this community. They see their contributions as directly benefiting the organization that they represent. We have other volunteers where their organization is extremely supportive, but they have other duties during business hours, and their employers are supportive, but they can't use all of their time volunteering for TRB as time worked, so to speak. And then we have another group who are true volunteers, where everything they're doing for us, they're doing nights and weekends because their day job has very different responsibilities from the roles that they're performing within the TRB community. And so as we strive for balance, these are the things that we're looking at as well. We want to make sure that we have opportunities for all of those different types of individuals to be engaged in our work.
Great. Well, I want to be respectful of time here. So just want to thank you, Marcy, Claire, Victoria, again, for joining us. We very much value the partnership and collaboration with TRB. Thank you for providing this a little bit of a 101 here to our members. And we hope that this has inspired many of you on the line to get more involved with TRB.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.